everyone. It's Adania with Refreshing Spring Church. Welcome to our Wednesday night Bible study. I'm glad that we're able to join in. I'm going to give y'all a moment to get caught up and also for me to join the live on my phone so I can see what you have to say, your comments and your questions. I'm actually having trouble finding the video. We are on the Refreshing Spring page, correct?
Yes.
I don't see the video yet. Interesting. Okay, well, I want to welcome you all, and I'm so excited for today. And continuing the series, This is Jesus. It's been a interesting time that we've had every week dialoguing about what the book of Matthew shares and sheds light about Jesus and his time. Today we're on part 5 of Jesus, the This is Jesus series. And I'm going today to invite our pastor to join in on the subject. So if we can go ahead and welcome Pastor Isaiah into the live video with us. We're going to discuss a very sensitive but timely...
Yeah.
First of all, have you seen the video live? Because I can't get it on mine.
Yes, it's live.
Can you check? Because I want to see people's response, but it's not showing. Oh, there we are. Okay, cool. All right.
We are live.
We are live. All right. This part 5 is talking about what would Jesus do. And like I said, this today is a very sensitive subject. My goal is not to offend anyone, but we will be talking about the subject of what's going on in our time and our place as the church, as the body of Christ in society today. So my hope is not how our train of thought has been designed in this world and how to renew our mind to be the mind of Christ. So we want Pastor for joining me today.
Welcome me.
Okay. So I'm just going to do a recap about the last 4 parts that we've talked about in this series.
Did you already get a chance to pray?
Oh, yes, let's pray. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Father, I thank you for this day that you've made. I choose to rejoice and be glad in it, in spite of what the news is saying, in spite of coronavirus, in spite of the tragedies of the world, in spite of what's going on in Central America, the hurricanes, the earthquakes, the wildfires. In spite of it all, God, I choose to still rejoice and be glad because you've given us this day, and every day that we have is a day of hope and a day of just looking forward to what's to come. And so I ask that you come into this room and that you speak to us and through us, Father. And I ask that you go into every household that's watching through this live stream, every vehicle, every place that this person that is watching today may be, and that the words that we discuss today, Father, will prick everyone's heart, convict us, and allow us to think about the things that's going on in life. But I thank you and I praise you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so the recap of the last 4 sessions we've had is part 1, the genealogy of Jesus Christ, and how all of the relevance of all those names in chapter 1 of Matthew bring us to the conclusion that Jesus is the Messiah because of his bloodline and what was prophesied in the Old Testament. Part 2 revealed Jesus as the Son of God when we see him baptized and the Spirit of the Lord descends like a dove, and you hear the Father say that he approves of Jesus as his son. And part 3 is revealing Jesus as a human. He's led to the wilderness by the Spirit of God, and he's tempted 3 times by the devil to basically surrender to whatever the devil was saying, and Jesus would always respond back with the word. And we discussed how the word is our weapon to fight off the temptation, to fight the voice of the enemy. And then that was part 3. Part 4 revealed Jesus as a teacher. We went through Matthew 5 through 7, a whole lot of content in those chapters about the Sermon on the Mountain and the things that Jesus was talking about. And like I said before to the people at RSC, that I was not aware about the incident with George Floyd at the time, but it was so relevant, the message that Jesus was talking about, which leads us to our subject today. What would Jesus do? And that's such a cliche, right? We hear like in every situation, oh, what would Jesus do? It's like the nice, cool hashtag thing to say. But in times like these, do we really wonder, what would Jesus do? We as a church, we as people who call ourselves Christian, we talked about those fundamentals in chapters 5 through 7 of Matthew, discussing what were the fundamentals of Christianity. And now we're going to talk about, okay, what would Jesus do then? And I guess as a response, what should we be doing if we are followers of Jesus Christ? So today we're going to cover a few topics. First, the relevance of the time we're facing and how Jesus would have responded. The sensitive subject in relation to discrimination, prejudice, and racism. And what are some strategic solutions to the social and soul problem that's going on in our nation? So it's a heavy subject. I just ask that you stay along, and that if you are in some way offended or uncomfortable, that it's okay. It's okay, because these conversations are necessary for healing, for us to progress as a people in unity, to progress as the church, because we are supposed to be, like we discussed last week, the salt and the light. And if we're not doing that, as I posted earlier, then we are the ones that Jesus was referencing as hypocrites, because we're supposed to be upholding the fundamentals of our faith, and we're not doing that. So that's why I have my husband here today joining me.
I think she forgot who I was for a minute there, y'all. She was like
because I was about to say my beautiful husband, but that sounds a little weird, right? My beautiful husband. No, I don't like that. So I had to think about the adjective I was about to use. But and if you have something, that's why I wanted to look at the comments. If you have something that you want to chime in about, this is the time that we have and the platform we have to do so and talk about that. So, okay. The first point, the relevance of the times we're facing and how Jesus would have responded to that. The subject of race is something, and most importantly for me, Black and colored people is really something dear in my heart. obviously for the reason that I'm married to someone that is black, but myself included as a minority, which we have our own set of disadvantages in this country. And so this is something that I wanted to bring up for us to talk about as husband and wife, and how even in our dynamic it's been kind of interesting, and the experiences that we've had, and what are the origins of our backgrounds, and all of those kinds of things. So, but first I want to hit how Jesus would have responded. So I'm going to go through some verses. Go ahead and get something to write these notes down. If you want to study more, we're not going to go into a whole passage of scriptures, but I'm going to give you just some one verse scriptures here and there in the Gospels. And even after Jesus, you'll see how the followers of Jesus, the disciples, which became apostles, how they repeated the same message of Jesus. And so in Mark 1:41, it says, moved with compassion, Jesus reached out and touched him. I am willing, he said, be healed. I really saw this verse in a whole different light earlier today when I read it, because this is about a man that asked Jesus, willing, will you heal me? Mm-hmm. And Jesus, it says, moved with compassion, he reached to this man, he reached out and touched him and said, I am willing. And he said, be healed. In just this one verse is so profound, because you see, firstly, Jesus is moved with compassion. And I think that's one thing that we sometimes overlook, that we're supposed to have that same compassion that Jesus had. This is something that the word compassion you see multiple times in the scriptures. And I'm not saying that this specific situation dealt with race, but it could be put in the context that you come and reach out across boundaries and across color and across culture differences, and say, you know what? Yes, I'm willing to be part of the healing process. I'm willing to be the one to speak up for the one that doesn't have a voice. I am. This is what it said. Jesus, moved with compassion, reached out and touched him.
If I could just interrupt for a quick second.
Yes, Pastor. Go ahead.
I'm not going to be here long. But the interesting part is that if I remember this particular part of Jesus's ministry, as well as I think I do, this particular man who is asking Jesus, if you will, to make me clean, he's a leper. When lepers back in those days, if you had a specific disease, you were supposed to get out and you were supposed to stay in your place. Interesting enough, while Jesus did not find himself in his shoes, he was intentional enough to take that way. It's something, because it would not have been in his normal pathway, but he was intentional enough, and I actually believe that's what it's going to take during these times that we're in right now. It's going to take intentionality. It's going to take somebody to say, I'm not just going to happen to be this person, or happen to be better. I'm not just going to stumble upon being better. It's going to take intentionality. And when he found himself intentionally in the right spot, the next thing that we see there is a mentality. Because he was intentional about it, because he was not supposed to touch those people. He was not supposed to touch somebody with that type of sickness. He was not supposed to touch somebody who wasn't like him in that regard. Yes. And it's interesting because, like I said, first of all, with intentionality, he goes that way where they are. And then secondly, he touches them. And when he touches the lepers, he doesn't leave them the same way that he found them.
That's good.
It's important. It's important that we pick each other up. I'm about to go into what we're talking about later, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to shut up and let Idanya go ahead back to what she
No,
was
that was good. That's good. And this is part of this. One last part of that. What Pastor was saying is, this man was a leper. He had a skin disease, and the community would deem people with that unclean. And so it goes back to this scenario is not.
Isn't that interesting?
It's not
They were not clean because of the way their skin looked.
Yeah. Ooh.
I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do that.
Yes.
I'm not gonna do that. Go ahead.
Okay, this specific situation in the Bible didn't deal with race, but it surely dealt with prejudice and discrimination. And again, Jesus was not fazed by the disease of their skin. He wasn't fazed by what, if I touch you, I will become unclean. He let the holiness of himself, the cleanliness of himself, affect the one that was deemed unclean. And so that goes back to what we said, being the salt and being the light. We are the people chosen to go and be the light and be the hope and be the voices. This is not the time where the church needs to be quiet and shut up, because this is more than just a color of the skin, a different country, a different ethnicity, a different nationality. This is a soul and spiritual problem that is really delegated by the principalities of darkness to bring hatred and division, which is totally against the gospel of Jesus Christ. So I'm not going to go so deep because I have a few more scriptures to go through.
She said she got a lot to talk to y'all about. That's not it.
Luke 10:33 says, "Then a despised Samaritan came along, and when he saw the man, he felt compassion for him." Again, this is a person that was despised and a Samaritan, which goes a little deeper because this was a mixed breed of someone not being a Jew or counted as holy or of our kind. These were a mixed breed, a different race. They were maybe considered not clean as well. I'm not too familiar with the subject of the Samaritan people, but they were despised. This is what the word says. Despise is to dislike, to maybe utterly dislike. And when that man came along, Jesus felt compassion for him. Again, we're talking about the heart of Jesus and what our heart should reflect if we call ourselves Christians. You have something to say?
No, go ahead.
Oh, you're looking at me. Okay. Next verse, Matthew chapter 9, verse 36 says, "When he saw the crowds," we're talking about Jesus, when Jesus saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were confused and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. This totally sounds like our times. There's crowds outside, confused, feeling helpless, like sheep just running around, trying to find answers, trying to find justice, trying to find trying to reason why this is happening in our nation, why is this happening in our communities, and there is no resolution for what has been going on, because it has been going on for generations and generations and generations, and we say we progress, and we progress slightly a few steps just to go back 10 more. So, this is exactly what it's saying in Matthew 9:36. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them. This is what Jesus, I'm talking about what the heart of Jesus is. He is full of compassion for the less fortunate, the broken-hearted. We saw it all in Matthew 5 when he talked about the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those that mourn, for they shall be comforted. This is something really deep in the heart of God, people. And so when he saw the crowds, it just made sense how relevant. We're talking about the relevance of the time we're facing now and how Jesus would have responded. And the first 3 verses that I've talked about is about the compassion of God, the compassion of Jesus. 2 Corinthians 11:29 says, "Who is weak without my feeling that weakness? And who is led astray and I do not burn with anger?" Okay, now this is talking about the people of God, right? The leaders that were left on the earth to continue the message and the gospel of Jesus Christ. And he's posing a question: who is weak without me feeling that weakness? And who is led astray that I won't burn with anger? It's something that is supposed to be what our hearts feel, that when we feel somebody is being hurt, we feel hurt too. And when somebody cries, we cry too. I'm not big on public crying, but I'm like punk for seeing other people cry.
Yes, she is.
I mean, I could see it on TV. It could be bad acting TV, and I'm like tearing up. And it's like, why am I tearing up? I don't even know. But that's what our divine nature should be. We should not be operating in our sinful nature anymore. We should be operating in the divine nature, and the divine nature is the nature of God and the nature of Jesus Christ. 1 Corinthians 12:26 says, "If one part suffers, all the parts suffer with it. And if one part is honored, all the parts are glad." I'm just putting out words for you to understand, for us to understand that this is how what would have Jesus done? This is how he would have responded. That if my pinky is hurting, the rest of my body feels it. If my nose is punched, my whole face feels it. Isn't that true? The whole face burns when your nose is punched.
You notice whenever something happens to your nose, your eyes start crying.
Yeah.
They're connected.
It's natural. Your body, the rest of your body, all the nerves in your body are going to respond to that pain. All the blood that is going to go trying to rush, to heal, to clot the area that is bleeding. So this is just fundamentals here. If one class of people is suffering, there's no way that we can say that we can just be quiet or we don't involve ourselves. This is not politics, people. This is a matter of the soul. This can only be resolved with the people of God, because politicians can't have the answer for everything, and we might look unto them for leadership, but it really starts in the house of God. It starts with us. It starts with me saying, what do I need to change? And when I make a change and you make a change, now we're making a communal change. And now we can affect the local level and the state level and the government and the federal, But it starts with examining our individual selves. Okay. Last one. Hebrews 13:13 says, "Remember those in prison as if you were there yourself. Remember also those being mistreated as if you felt the pain in your own bodies." Man, I mean, and this is just some of the verses I found just by typing in the word compassion. How many more stuff is in the Bible that deals with what the gospel really is? What was the message of Jesus Christ in the 3 and some years that he was on this earth? He was tearing down political views. He was tearing down religious views, traditional views. He was tearing it all down just to come to the root of what his 2 most important commandments were, which covered all the commandments. Loving God first with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength, and then loving others as you love yourself. This is what this is saying. Remember also those being mistreated as if you felt that pain yourself. Putting yourself in other people's situation. Maybe you're not black, but just think about if you were in that situation. Try to, put yourself in the place of where if you were the one mistreated, how would that feel? If it was your son, if it was your husband, if it was your daughter, if it was your mother or your father being the one mistreated just because of the disease of their skin, just because of the color of their skin, just because of a prejudice or a preconceived notion of what this person may be without even getting to know them. Wow, that was real heavy. I did a lot of talking. You have something to say?
No. I think you covered it, and you covered it well. It's interesting that we see this same topic in the Bible that you and I are dealing with today. And I say you and I, no matter what color you are that who may be watching this, you can be a white person, a black person, Hispanic person, Asian person, but we all have a part to play in the equality and the justice for others. If I am the one who is facing an injustice, then of course I'm going to try to plead my case, but also those who are around, they are equally, I want to say culpable. Is that the word I'm looking for? They're equally to blame if that injustice continues to occur. And it's like Idanya said, one of the things that Jesus did is he made sure, no, I'm going to put my stamp here, because when I leave here, then those people who were once done unjustly will now become just. Now there will be justice in their name. The people who were once considered dirty, I'm going to, not only am I going to make them clean, but I'm going to send them, back in those days, in order for you to be considered clean, you had to go to the priest. Isn't it something today? Still to this day, we have to prove ourselves to somebody. And the good part about it is that because God knows the mind of men, he will set us up in positions and places for us to prove to others that God can still do this thing for us and through us. Okay? That's all I wanted to share with this particular point. I know you have a couple more things that we want to get to.
Oh gosh, we only have 15 minutes to bring such heaviness.
My goodness.
Okay.
We might have to do a part 2.
We might. I wanted to go into our next part of discrimination, prejudice, and racism. And I want us to start, and when I mean us, I mean you and I.
Oh, I thought you were going to say us, I mean you.
To start with our personal experiences and the origins of our point of view. So what was your experience with race growing up? Like what were you taught? What was your belief, system growing up at home?
Okay. The values that were instilled in me.
Or the lack of.
Well, what I'm saying is the values that were instilled in me. Not talking about any time I encountered.
You can go into.
Okay.
Go into your upbringing first, and then we can go into personal experiences.
I was taught from as far back as I can remember, I was taught that the color of your skin does not define your character. Mm-hmm. I was taught that. For as long as I can remember, the color of your skin does not define your character. I don't remember how old I was, but maybe it was in my early teens or maybe when I just hit double digits, maybe 10 years old, is when my parents had to start having other conversations with me. Mm-hmm. And they never point blankly sat me down and said, "Son, you're a black man living in America." They never did that. Mm-hmm. But what they started to do is they would throw little lessons at me, especially in February, Black History Month. My mother watched every single Black History movie, show, whatever. She wanted to make sure that I knew that I was a black man. And so, and my dad, he was one. My dad was the one who. I think he was the vice president of the NAACP at school when he went to the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. So they made sure that I recognized my blackness, and they had a beautiful balance of telling me we do not treat anyone differently based upon color. But I want you to understand that you may be treated differently based on the color of your skin. Mm-hmm. That was it. And now, Are we getting into like idiosyncrasies and nuances of different people and what they do? We get into that too?
What do you, I don't know. But I do want to go on my side of the
Okay, you go ahead and I may tackle some other things that were not as that was not as positive on my parents' perspective, because if we do not tackle it, there is a little bit of prejudice that everybody grows up with.
Yeah, and that's where I want, because this is difficult for me, because as you grow older, you're able to into your past and learn more about yourself and why you think a certain way and why do you act a certain way. It's all kind of a product of your upbringing. So I have to say, in terms of people who were Black, in our culture, in the Hispanic culture, it's something that's actually very difficult to talk about, because I'll say I grew up in a setting that disliked Black people. I remember growing up with hearing from different voices, either in my family or just in surroundings of our of people that we grew up knowing, of they are lazy, they not only deal drugs, but they are drug addicts. You always were kind of afraid of, groups or huddles of especially Black men. You were always told, like, some things weren't even verbalized. To be honest, it was just understood. It was understood that we don't socialize with them because they're a bad influence. And so I had that ideology as a child. I had the ideology that Black people, and I won't say, I don't know how deep it is, because going into Latin American countries, there is Afro influence, but it wasn't told to us necessarily, don't talk to a Dominican person or a Puerto Rican person, or it was more targeted towards Black Americans. So that was my experience. It wasn't until I was 15 and and that was my experience of the influences in family and friends around, hearing what adults would talk about, thinking that the children aren't really listening, or commenting on something that they've seen on TV, or even the music. And since I was little, I always had an appreciation for the arts of the Black community. Music was very influential. R&B was very influential for me. Rap was very influential for me in my younger years. And so even though in my mind I thought that didn't affect me, in some ways it had to have affected me. And so it would be unfair for me to say, no, I never had those prejudices, even to this day. It's sad to say, but it's the truth.
But that's the thing. So with us, we were taught not to. There would actually be a statement, and it may not be these exact words, but there would actually be a statement that would say something to the effect of, you do not treat anyone differently based on the color of their skin. Now, where we did treat you differently is when you did something differently than we did it. So when I saw you touch my food before, precious Father, why you got to do that? Now I don't want nothing you got because your whole house is dirty and everything like that. And then once you see enough people of a certain race do it, it becomes, oh,
they like that.
White people, that's what they do. Hispanic people, that's what they do. That's what they do. You see what I'm saying? And so if we're not careful, there's a little bit of prejudice that we all end up embracing even. Not just, and I mean, so the good part about One good thing about me was that I actually went through a training to be a missionary. And in that training, we were taught, when you go out of town, when you go to this different country, when you go to these different places and they put a plate of food in front of you, we were supposed to eat it. Mm-hmm. No matter what. And you could have seen different things happening that you would normally not have had occur at your home, and you were supposed to eat it. And so that type of training it kind of actually reformed my mind a little bit, but because, and I guess I felt like Paul, there was a war in my members, because there's one part of me telling me, Isaiah, be a good missionary and eat this food and da-da-da-da, and this other part of me is not just taking the food because they fed me. They're like, oh, okay, well, I have to do this because I'm a good missionary. Now I become pious.
Oh, yeah.
And what I didn't realize is that I end up being a bigot. And here I am. I'm black. I'm African American. Everything is happening against me. This is not to say that there is not an inequality against African Americans, because indeed there is. It is systemic. Just wanted to put that out on the record. However, there are also times when, as African Americans, we can stand up and also become bigots in our own respect, and we can become bigots against others. And these are things that we actually have to deal with, because if it is not dealt with, we will embrace a certain amount of prejudice. Sorry, go ahead.
That's true. So that's just a little bit of the origin part. I don't want to go into personal experiences, and now I'll spirit off and then give you a moment.
Cool.
Okay, so was that a cue? I'm sorry.
5 minutes, yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, but we started later today, so do we get to go in the full hour?
That still only gives us 10 minutes, according to the time. We've been only for 49 minutes.
Oh, really? Oh, no, but that was the beginning. Anyhow, that was the beginning of the video. We'll be here shortly.
Go ahead.
All right. Okay, so personal experiences. So my personal experience with race, or more specifically prejudice, was growing up thinking the white person is your aspiration and the black person is to be feared or not associated with. So it's like a color spectrum. The lighter skin you were, if you had color eyes, even if you ultimately married into a white family, you made it in life, even if they weren't educated. And that's not, I don't want to be offensive to white people either. That's not my goal here, but I'm just sharing my experience, right? So, growing up, this thing specifically with law enforcement, we grew up terrified of the police. I remember we would go driving, maybe, wherever we were driving, and we got pulled over, even if we weren't at guilt of anything, my mom would be like, be quiet, sit down, don't talk. And she'll get so worked up, and so we're like terrified with her, like, what is about to happen? And I know one thing with our people is language barrier. A lot of people felt they were taken advantage of just because they couldn't even really fully communicate with an American or English-speaking officer. But that's what I grew up knowing all my life as a child. So I had this idea of hating the police because they were all, coming after us. They were all racist. They were all, against us. They weren't there to, we never thought, oh, let me call the police to protect me. That wasn't even that wasn't a thing. It's so crazy, but that's what they're there for, to protect you and for the well-being and security of the community. But that's not the idea that I ever had of or the experiences that we had when we got pulled over. It was always very frightening. That's on the law enforcement side that we grew up with. And then again, like I shared my experience of, I didn't really get to know Black people for real. I didn't even have Black friends or hang out with Black people until I was like 15. And I had been put into a youth program that was directed mainly by Black people. And that's where I really learned about being around Black people. The first stigma that I had is that this is crazy and I'm so sorry, but that all people are nasty, they don't bathe, they stink, they smell like weed. And so when I had the experience with people from church that they didn't stink, they weren't lazy, they worked, you know, everything that was embedded in my mind socially by my environment wasn't necessarily true. And so that was my kind of awakening moment for years to come about Black people, you know. So
I can understand why she prefaced this particular lesson, message, whatever it is, with she doesn't mean to offend anybody, because that just got deep. In regards to, you know, and we I could say we appreciate your honesty, but I can also tell you in our regards with the police, I didn't grow up in the best of neighborhoods. It wasn't the worst of the worst, but it also wasn't the best of the best. And because of the neighborhood that I grew up in, it was common for, if you called 911, they just didn't show up. Mm-hmm. or excuse me, they may have been a great delay, you know, because of the neighborhood that we grew up in. It was a predominantly Black neighborhood. And I have to say predominantly Black because I knew 2 white people who lived in that neighborhood, only 2, and they were our neighbors. Mm-hmm. But other than that, everybody else that I knew in the neighborhood was Black. And when there had been times where we were burglarized, there have been times where our cars, my parents' cars had been stolen, different things like that. And at the time, the police, it did not appear as if they made haste to come and see what was happening over with us. And then I remember also when we would, if we were driving and we got pulled over, oh my goodness. Like there was like our breath, we stopped breathing for a moment. Like, as soon as you saw that red and those red or blue lights whipping behind you, you were like, sweet Jesus, I don't want anything bad to happen. I remember one day I got pulled over because I was speeding. This is by the time I had become a driver. I was speeding, so he wrote me a ticket, and he was like, "Sir, can you tell me why you were going so fast?" And in my mind, I'm like, "Why does he have his hand near his hip?" But I did. There was no violent offense here. I was speeding. I was just trying to get to work on time, officer. And my parents had always taught me, police ask you to do something, you show them that your hands are empty. And you tell them what you're about to do before you do it. And that was something that we were trained with. Because my parents grew up in a rougher age and era than I did, because my dad, my mother is no longer with us. My dad is 1,000 years old. So that's that. In regards to, I had another point. I can't remember it.
Can I ask you something? I've heard. Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry. The other thing that I've noticed about particularly people who look like me, particularly Black African American people, and I notice it in my neighborhood, whenever a Black person starts to come up and starts to do well, then we start to dog them. Because you was a sellout. Because you were no longer struggling with us. Now you made it, and when you made it, you left the neighborhood that was still impoverished. And why I haven't yet understood how come we can't celebrate them.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up because it's kind of leading into what I was about to bring up. Because I've heard comments.
Sorry, Cece, I just saw your message. You better not turn around. Keep your head forward. Go ahead.
I've heard comments specifically relating to you, and I feel like sometimes I'm like the filter of foolish comments, maybe out of ignorance or whatever, maybe someone's upbringing. They'll say something about generalizing the Black community, a stigma, a negative stigma, right? And then say, oh, but your husband is not like them. Have you experienced that?
Yes.
Of how do you, because you know what, you don't dress in hoodies, you don't, dress like what is the stigma of somebody from the streets. So I've heard it from Black people, I've heard it from other races that, oh, but he's better. Almost like you said, like if you seem to be a little more educated or have a good paying job, or you're doing stuff maybe that's not the way it culturally was done before in your family, now you're better than. So that's something, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? Because I don't know how to respond to that. I'm like, one person, and I'm sorry, but they were like, oh, he was a house.
Don't say that.
Yes.
You don't.
And I was like, that's why I did it. But, he's like one of those, like he was, and I'm like, what do I respond to something like that? Like, this is why this conversation was really important for me, because I feel for years I've just to be politically correct or to not make people uncomfortable or offend people close to me, co-workers. I mean, it's been a full spectrum of people, and I feel like a filter protecting you from comments like that, and it's like, that's not cool, and I'm not going to shut up about it anymore.
And I think that's what you do. That's exactly, a moment ago you said, what do you do in those types of regards? And what do I say you do? You say something. Silence is compliance. Silence is compliance. If I can sit here and listen to you bash somebody, and
but
I'm just,
they think they're making a compliment.
And don't get me wrong, I understand that. But that's what I was taught a new word, a backhanded compliment.
Yes, exactly. They think that they're saying, "Oh, your husband is so much better off,"
but that stems from a deeper place of racism. Or that stems, and maybe they don't think they're fully racist, but that does stem from a deeper place of prejudice.
Yeah.
It stems from a deeper place of prejudice. And knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And sometimes people don't recognize that they have that prejudice, and this is my mantra all night. If you don't deal with it, you will embrace the prejudice. Mm-hmm. Everybody has a little bit of prejudice that if they don't deal with it, they will embrace it. And what we have to do is we have to get to a point where because I know another gentleman, and he speaks very well. He is very educated, and he is quite a few shades darker than I am. But because of his eloquent speech, they call him an Oreo. And because he speaks like a white man.
But that's usually our own people talking back, because Hispanic people do that too.
Exactly. He speaks like a white man. Why is it that because he is intelligent and he speaks that way, he has to speak like a white man? As if to say that a Black person cannot also speak intelligently.
Yeah.
But and the thing about it is when I talk to another Black person and I say that, they take offense as if I'm coming to them. And it's like, no. What I'm trying to do is help us learn to encourage each other and do better for each other. Because the more we the more we, I can't figure out how to get this point out. Anyhow, I want us, I saw something on Facebook the other day, maybe it was today, maybe it's earlier today, and it had, you know how those memes, they had a top picture and a bottom picture, and the top picture, it says, "They are not afraid of this." And it had a picture of, it looked like a riot, but it looked like a black man as he was about to throw a gate. Mm-hmm. And then it said, "They are not afraid of that." At the bottom it said, "They are afraid of this." And it was a bunch of black men sitting, a bunch of black men in suits handling themselves appropriately. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that we have to realize is that you got to learn how to beat people at their game. Mm. You gotta learn how to beat people at their game.
That's true.
If that's the game, my dad taught me this. If that's the game, I'm going to play it, and I'm going to play it well.
But we're gonna go into that in the next part of this.
I'm gonna be quiet.
Okay, the next part I wanted to touch on is cultural awareness, and you kind of went into that subject. But I want to go in a little deeper of discussing. I only had exposure to real exposure to black people on a I can touch you level, not just we went to school or, go to work together, but actually having relational connections with black people when I was 15. And that's what brought me awareness of the culture. And so the same thing for, not just Hispanic or black or other minorities. But the problem that we have of embracing other cultures or thinking that we don't have a problem, but we do have those underlying biases or prejudices from our upbringing. So I just wanted to discuss that, touch on that topic because, like you said, I've seen it in church, and the church is pretty much very divided. You could see that in our services. It's been just like a handful of churches that I've seen that are genuinely multicultural. And I think part of the problem is that we're not doing like Jesus is saying, yes, I'm gonna touch you, I'm willing to be part of feeling like I can't feel for you if I don't have a connection to you. If I won't be as compassionate if I don't put myself in your experience and seeing, and that's on both sides of the table because what I've always is that there are very genuinely nice white people who are trying to build, they are willing, but because we reject that connection because of history, we're not progressing. I've seen it at company events, very nice people, and sometimes we have to have that patience to understand that they don't really know. They're like trying the best way, even if it's like kind of awkward, or something that they said sounds like super corny and you're like, nah, I can't connect with you. But we have to get past that awkwardness to be able to have genuine relationships, so the next time somebody will think twice before putting their knee on someone's neck, because they can think of, I had a friend, I have a family member that looks like you, that speaks like you. I'm not so distant that this wouldn't affect me.
You have to first make that person human. That's number one.
Yeah.
And then you secondly have to realize that they are not your enemy.
Ooh.
I think that's so important.
Yeah.
First of all, humanize them. Second of all, allow yourself to recognize that they are not your enemy. Not everybody is your enemy. I spoke to somebody recently who is not white, and when she was talking about white people, and she was just like, I just don't like them. Just get them away from me. And that, with that type of mentality, how can you ever bring cohesion? Mm-hmm. You can't.
Yeah.
with and the same goes for I wouldn't have that conversation with a white person who thought that about a black person because they wouldn't be talking to me. But the same
Yeah.
goes for the white person who thinks that same way. The same goes for the Hispanic
Yeah.
person who thinks that same way. For the Asian person who thinks that same way. It is something that across the globe, all races and nationalities, it's a prize to be lighter.
Yeah.
The lighter you are. I have a friend of mine who's from the Philippines, and she told me that all of their skincare products, and I don't know if it's true or not, but she used the term all. I'll just say many of their skincare products have bleach in it, so that way your skin is lighter. I had somebody who did not. She was not politically correct. She told me that because my son took his complexion more after his mother than me, that he was really beautiful because he's not so dark.
I've heard it too, and I've heard it. I think you're talking about someone I can recall, but I've heard that too, on people from work, from closeness, friendships, and it's like it's hard to talk about because it's people that you care about, but it's something that needs to be addressed because my son is not, and this is very personal, because my son is not better because he took more of the complexion of his mother, or less than because he has a wide nose. I've had comments like that. Oh, you didn't mold his nose, and I'm like, at that point I said his nose is beautiful, and they felt weird and they just didn't continue the conversation. But it's not okay, and to do that to children or make those comments to the child. I mean, my son is 2. He's gonna grow up, if we allow, with complexes of who he is and have to pick and choose what side he needs to pick and choose for his own benefit.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think we should wrap up, but we should continue this conversation maybe even next Wednesday.
Okay.
Because we got to get this together. And like I said, silence is compliance. Silence is compliance. If you deny that racism is not still present, then either you are blind or you are lying, because it is very much still here. It is very much still here. When it is systematic, that and it is global.
Yes.
Lighter is
yes.
better.
Yes. That's
Darker,
true.
the darker, the uglier. Can I just give you a few tips? A few tips for yourself and a few tips for you to observe what's around you. Notice a darker person and a lighter person doing the same thing and listen to the verbiage that's used. Idanya was watching something the other day on TV. I thought it was really powerful how this one girl, when she was younger, she was very dark, and they called her loud and ghetto and rude and all this other stuff. And so she began bleaching her skin. The interesting part about it is the more she bleached her skin, the more the verbiage changed. She was no longer ghetto, she was outspoken.
Or passionate.
Yes. That's what it was. It was passionate. She was passionate. Another person brought up to me where I've seen a white woman who she may put her hair up and have her hair frizzy, and it's cute, it's a look, it's a thing, but a woman walks out in a bonnet and it's ghetto.
Yeah. Or even
ghetto.
if I wanted to wear my hair nasty like that, not nasty, I'm sorry, that's not the word, but like frizzed out like that, then I'm probably gonna be called out to be a housekeeping person. Those are comments I've gotten. Oh, are you the manager of housekeeping? I mean, I guess it's nice to be called the manager at least, but
that was only because she had the suit on.
But that look wouldn't fit for someone like because at the end of the day, even though I have a lighter skin color, I have indigenous features in me that will distinguish me as not Caucasian, you know? And so at the end of the day, I'm not treated as if I was maybe Caucasian. I'm sorry, again, I'm not trying to offend anyone, but these are real experiences that we have had that need to be talked about, so we can have those moments like Jesus. Again, that first verse was so powerful to me. I saw it totally in a different light. When this man says, "Are you willing to heal me?" And Jesus says, "I'm willing." He had compassion in his heart. And this is where both sides can come together and say, "I am willing." Whereas before, maybe we haven't been willing, but I am willing to open up dialogue. I am willing to, I may not be able to change my whole community. I may not be able to change the whole nation, but I can start in my circle. I can say, I'm not going to tolerate what I used to tolerate anymore.
I just want to give one final thought.
Okay.
We talked about Jesus and how he had compassion and he went to touch somebody. Can I give you Jesus on the other end of that spectrum? They crucified him.
Mm-hmm.
And while they crucified him, he forgave them.
Yeah.
God, that's big. While they crucified him, he forgave them. Don't underestimate the power of your forgiveness to release somebody else.
Yeah.
I don't know what your status is with God, but what I do know is that our God has a plan for you. What I do know is that I don't care what you've been through, what you're doing, our God is able.
Amen.
And so if you don't know Jesus, and I want you to know that there was a man named Peter. He was a ride or die for Jews. He had nothing for Gentiles. Some would call him racist.
Mm-hmm.
He realized that the error of his ways because one day God told him, "Don't call unclean what I have made clean." If that was you, and I mean on either side of the spectrum, can I encourage you to repent today? Can I encourage you to seek Jesus? He's the Father of lights, whom there is no variableness. I told somebody yesterday, somebody posted something on Instagram and said, "I don't see color." Can I challenge you to see color and appreciate it? Can I challenge you to see the black and the white and the brown and the yellow and appreciate the diversity that God knows how to create?
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, if you would ask God to forgive you and ask God to open up your eyes so that when you see like him, you will see that there is beauty all around you.
Mm-hmm.
I want to pray with you. This evening,
Yeah.
and then we're going to let you go. Father, I thank you.
Hallelujah, Jesus.
I thank you now, God.
Thank you, Jesus.
Lord, there are so many people represented here. There are white people, black people, Hispanic people, Asian people. Lord, there are people from all over represented here.
Yes.
And Father, my prayer is that whether they watch this video live or they'll watch the rebroadcast, that something will be said here that will impact, that will change, that will affect somebody's heart, mind, and soul.
Yes.
Lord, if they don't know you, let them get to know you through us. Father, I'm praying now for the family of George Floyd.
Yes.
I'm praying now for the families of
In the
all
name
the
of
black
Jesus.
men and women who have been unjustly killed. I'm praying, oh God, for the
Yes.
business owners who have fallen themselves, who have been victims of looting. I'm praying.
Yes, God.
Lord, in the name of
Restore,
Jesus, that you would bring peace.
Yes,
You
Father.
said if my people who are called by my name would humble themselves, seek your face, pray, turn from our wicked ways, you'd hear from heaven, you would forgive our sins, and you would heal our land.
Yes,
Father,
God,
my prayer is
heal
that you
our
would
land.
forgiveness in our heart.
Heal our
Put
nation,
forgiveness in our
Jesus.
heart. Forgiveness on God, put forgiveness, put love in our heart. Put love in our heart,
Yes.
God, that we would not treat the other person different because of the color of their skin,
Yes,
because
God.
of their traditions and their heritage. God, I thank you.
Yes,
Because I believe you're
Jesus.
doing
Hallelujah.
something different now.
Yes, God.
In Jesus' name.
Thank you, Jesus.
You be blessed. I will see you on Sunday.
God bless.